This episode of the Free Lunch Podcast is brought to you by the Selma Project, an initiative created to infuse hope and inspiration into the youth of Selma, Alabama through culture, art, and entertainment. It is a call on natives and friends of the Selma movement to use their gifts, talents, and resources to pave a road of success for future generations. And brought to you by faithful listeners everywhere. And now to the show. Blow!
No Cadillac got the West, man. Deuce got the Crest. So, man, what they gonna do now? Put the West and the Crest together, man. Where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Atlanta, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Birmingham, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Mobile, where you at? Where you at? Where you at? Down south, showing no shame. Got the guns and the glow. We shaking that thing. Got the young bell coming up on the run down. See the girls and they have to slide. Like, real tight. Body set right. He can't cheat to the end of the night. Screw coming out. Got to get the club high. Don't let the city know how to die. Everybody wanna be down with the side. 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 Everybody trying to get down with the side. Everybody wanna be down with the side.
Welcome to the Free Lunch Podcast, home of the New South Movement. This your boy Tight, and I got my man B Jeezy with me. B Jeezy, what's happening?
BG the 27 Kid, Free Lunch Podcast. What's happening then? Dog, I thought we was spring, man. I thought spring was here. It's still cold around this camp.
We are recording live from the DC studios, and when you say you thought spring was here, are you referring to the weather in DC, sir?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I thought the warm weather was here, but it looked like Mother Nature had other plans.
So BG flew into town over the weekend, and he's down here. We've been working on some things with the Free Lunch Podcast, and really trying to take the podcast to the next level. So we are excited for what the next few weeks are going to bring. We're going to be introducing some guests, and we're going to be having more interviews. So I think that you listeners are going to be really excited about what we bring in the upcoming weeks.
We're about to turn it up a notch. I'm excited about the things that come. We're going to have some interesting guests with a lot of things to offer to the community, things to offer to the dialogue. So we on the move. The things that we set out to do, bro, I think we well on our way. We about to accomplish big things. So like we always say, we encourage all those that have been listening to keep listening and tell a friend about it. Share some of this free lunch.
We do, and as we continue on this theme of empowerment and self-empowerment, and also this power circle idea, I think today's conversation is going to be entertaining. I think it's going to be a conversation that may have been discussed in the barbershops and around a lot of between peers, but I think hopefully we can bring a different perspective to today's topic of conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think we've found our way to another polarizing conversation. I think it's going to be one way or the other. Some people are probably going to feel what we're talking about, and it's likely that some people are going to disagree. But either way, we're going to have this talk, and I'm looking forward to the response that we're going to get from it.
Headline. Creflo Dollar web page soliciting funds for $65 million private jet.
65 mil for
So-
the jet?
So a lot of people,
Man.
I'm sure there's been a lot of conversations. I've heard a lot of radio personalities. I've heard a lot of folks in the barber shop and just the water cooler conversations going on. And I think it's our chance and our opportunity to dive into the mix of such a hot topic. What you think?
Creflo say he need a new jet. A $65 million jet. I think we kind of alluded to this before, but I hope some of the members get an opportunity to ride in that thing, because that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. So let's jump right into it then.
Okay.
So for those listening to the podcast, like I said, we are very thankful. We appreciate you guys for listening, and we always want to give you the opportunity to sponsor the podcast. So at any point you would like to sponsor a particular segment or like for us to bring back a previous segment, send us an email or a shout out, and we'll be more than willing to highlight you as a sponsor, and also to bring back any old segments that we previously had. But with that said, as I alluded to earlier, I think we kind of want to have this conversation around Creflo Dollar and this idea of him soliciting or having the audacity or not to solicit members as well as just regular folks to donate up to $300 or donate $300 or more so that he can purchase a $65 million private jet. So, BG, when you first heard that story, when you first read that article, what was your initial thoughts?
You really want to know what my initial thought was?
I really do.
Damn. Creflo done found his way back in the news again, because if you remember, several years ago they had the congressman or representative or whatever that called a lot of those televangelists, a lot of these mega church pastors on the carpet for raising this money and doing different things with the money. And so Creflo Dollar was one of the ones that got a lot of attention during that time, and people trying to figure out what he's doing with the money, and if the call for, this money soliciting that a lot of the pastors do in the name of enhancing their ministries is like, are they taking advantage of the people, or are these funds being raised for some legitimate, noteworthy causes? So when I first heard that headline, I'm like, here we go again. And then $65 million is such an astronomical number. And then to put that on your membership, I think what they're asking, if 200,000 people gave $300, they would be able to achieve their goal. So I was a little thrown off by it, because I don't think we've ever heard of anything of this magnitude to make the news in terms of pastor asking for that type of money. But then just looking at, like, in my personal feeling, there's so many other things with that type of money and with that type of campaign for those funds that could be done. But, I was like, here we go again, for real, for real.
So do you think that he has the right, for lack of better words, to solicit the congregation or the folks for that type of money for that purpose? Like, what are your thoughts just in general around even the idea of having the audacity to even ask for that type of money and donation?
Well, I personally don't like it, especially if you get in the jet that the membership won't be able to access or be able to use. I could see it if it was going to be a jet for the church. And they say, okay, like when we go on our mission trips, members that pay their money and all that kind of stuff, we're going to use this jet to do that. But to put that type of burden on something for something that's as personal, because he's going to, probably him and his family and select representatives will be the only ones to use it. But, when you talk about audacity, I think this is just the next level of what he and other pastors are doing all the time in terms of, they have these ministries, some of these campaigns are worldwide campaigns, and they got to be there. And the membership is responsible for making sure that they get there, making sure that all of their expenses are taken care of. So I'm not surprised by it in theory, because this is what a lot of pastors are doing all of the time. And then you look at the congregations, a lot of congregations are geared towards, well, if pastor say he need it, we're going to make provisions to get it for him, which brings about a lot of other little elements that we'll talk about in this discussion. So I don't personally like it. I think it really kind of takes away from the overall picture that as a believer I won't paint it. But I think this is the norm. I think this is the next step. You'll probably start seeing or being made aware of a lot of more of these type of things that are going on. So as a believer and all those type of things, these are the things that we have to be aware of, and making sure that, you know, the people, our ministries, our ministers, and our churches are focused on the real objective, and that's saving people's lives, impacting people's lives in a positive way, and make sure that we're not getting caught up in this same materialism type of mood that the rest of the world moves in.
And my initial thoughts when I first read that article was the audacity to even solicit that type of money from so many folks. And the reason why is because I just feel like in this day and age, where if you look at just the economy in general and you look at the unemployment rate, which it has improved over the large number of years thanks to a lot of the policies that President Obama put in place, but knowing the position that a lot of Pastor Dollar's congregation would be in, I think that there becomes a time where ego and just having the self-entitled mindset, which that you can even solicit that type of money. I mean, let's just take a overview, or let's just take a step back and look at just the state of America in general, and the common theme is that when America has a cold, Black America has pneumonia, and so even though the economy has improved, you still have unemployment at such a high rate in regards to Black America. America may have unemployment at 7%, but Black America would have it at 14, 15%.
Definitely double that.
And a lot of those would be Pastor Dollar's congregation, his members, the folks that attend his church. And so it bothers me because when you have those type of numbers and when you see the current state of a lot of the folks that are in his congregation and who he ministered to each and every Sunday, I kind of wonder, why would you want to purchase such a high priced plane or jet when you have so many issues that are happening today? You mentioned other pastors. So Pastor Hilliard, I.V. Hilliard in Houston, Texas, had gotten a lot of attention about a year or so ago, was because he currently pastors 2 locations, both in Houston, one on the north side of Houston, one on the south side of Houston. And in doing so, he had, he would usually, when he would preach both services, he would have a police motorcade that would essentially take him on the Beltway to the other campus. Well, he had purchased a helicopter, and after purchasing that helicopter, similar to what Pastor Dollar is asking for, Pastor I.V. Hilliard in Houston solicited his congregation to each give $52. And it's not the same amount, but it's the idea that you would ask a congregation that typically probably has members that fall in that unemployment rate or that fall in that area where they may live check to check or may have financial issues. You would still want to solicit them for the idea of you having a luxury accessory, like a car, like a helicopter, or like a jet. And that personally, for me, if I'm a minister and I'm in the position of a Pastor Dollar or Pastor Hilliard, I would be with compassion not to want to even solicit that type of money for a luxury good. I would want to solicit that money and use it for the community that I'm living in, whether it's building a new community center or helping with the educational system, the schools, or finding a way to have an outreach in the community that I'm that I preach at on a weekly basis to help those individuals. So just initially and just from when I read that article, it really just I got a sense of just this is just me being transparent. Here's another pastor that is essentially trying to get over on this congregation, and I'm not saying that that's the case, but that was my initial feeling.
It speaks to that. It speaks to that unconscious nature that's been exhibited by a lot of church leadership, and it's that same unconsciousness that's running a lot of people out of the church, because you go in and you're expecting a good word, and you're expecting lessons and sermons and things that are going to improve your life, but then the person that is kind of responsible for being your shepherd, so to say, is unconscious to really what's going on amongst the membership. Like you say, you've got people that are coming that live around these institutions and live around these churches in a certain condition. Like you say, struggling from check to check, if they even have a check. And you look at the surrounding community and school system, and you're talking about a campaign for $65 million so that you can take trips and minister to people all over the world, when you could use that same $65 million and put it into something that the people can use, and by way of placing it for the people, be ministering to their souls, a community center or an improved school system or whatever that the people that support the church really need. So it's a slap in the face, man, really, when you think about it. And it's really, as people are waking up to the fact that these type of things are going on, it's really making a lot of people disgruntled about the whole belief, about the whole faith, because you have this type of representation, which is not really Christ-like. They say Christ rode around on a mule to get from place to place.
Was it a luxury mule?
It wasn't no luxury mule. It probably was representative of what the common people have. So why now do we have, people that deliver these messages, these pastors? Why do they feel like their mode of transportation has to be so much more above the people that they're serving? I remember a business person telling me a long time ago, they would they wouldn't go out and buy the most fancy vehicles or wear the fancier clothes, because they wanted to kind of blend in and be representative of the people that came in and supported their businesses. So if a business person can take that approach, why can't someone who's in tune to the spirit and faith feel and care about people, why can't they tap into that same consideration?
But then it also poses the question, how connected are they to their congregation? Because if you had a relationship, or if you had a personal connection with your congregation, then you would understand that the majority of your congregation isn't living the same luxury life that you're living. So, a lot of times we give a lot of flack to President Bush, because he was 100% disconnected from the African-American race in so many ways. Well, there's parallelism in this very act that both Dr. Dollar and Pastor Hilliard are doing. Because to me it speaks on something that's much larger than the idea of ministry. And I think that's where the message gets blinded, because so many people see it as this is an opportunity to go spread the gospel to the world, or to in Pastor Hilliard's case, to spread the gospel on the north and the south side of Houston. But what about the people that you interact with on a daily basis, or the majority of your time? What about them and their souls and the things that they have to deal with on a daily basis? And then we talk about, and if you watch the interviews and if you listen to what Pastor Dollar was saying in the past, where they had so many outreach ministries, I think it's something to have so many outreach ministries, but I think the true test is how many of them are effective and retention. See, the biggest question I learned when I was talking to an older person once, and they told me the true test of the success of a church, whether it be a mega church or a small church, is the retention. So if you really look at the retention of that congregation, or if you look at the retention in this case of an outreach program, how successful are they? To put a program in place just to say to have a number, but not be able to show benefits on a larger scale of how individuals are growing and self-empowering themselves, then to have that outreach program is a mere smokescreen of reality.
Yeah.
Of reality. And I think that we have to stop getting blinded by the subliminal messages of using this luxury good to quote unquote minister to the world. But how many trips are you really using to minister to the world, and how many of them are you using for personal reasons? And you want to hide it behind the church, and you may plan a trip to Nairobi, Kenya. But is that a trip where you're going to preach one sermon so that you can have that on the book as a reason for going down there, and then the remainder of the trip is personal luxury? Those are really the questions that you have to ask. I can go start a business, and I can travel and start a corporation, and as a tax write-off, travel to a site and have one business meeting, and the rest of it be for luxury. But I've served the purpose of that trip, and so that's the question. Really becomes how. And I know you got so much to say, but the question really becomes, how are you really ministering to these people? Or is it simply a means of saying you did something so that you can say you did it, and then you can use it for your personal interest?
And that's the trickeration, because it's hard to measure the effectiveness of a church, and a lot of times the church institution, in the church institution, that success is measured by how many ministries you have, how many of these global trips and these global missions do you make. And I think within the community, that's kind of the badge of how well you're actually doing. And that's the smoke screen that some people, even as people that come in joining these particular churches, they probably look at that and say, okay, well, they got a world ministry, or they're doing these things.
Right.
They probably have something going on. But for me, I would like to see these churches master their communities first.
Yes. Let me see you master your community, and let me see the fruit of your community be mastered before we take it to that next step. Just to say that you got 68 outreach programs, but they're not even effective outreach programs, to me is not effective.
Not effective at all.
It's not effective at all, but that's just the smoke screen that you put in place. Mm-hmm. And then you sit up there and people are sitting there buying into that. And in a lot of the things that I say, a lot of things that we may say, it comes off as being non-believer, non-supportive. And that's not the case. It's simply accountability. It's simply asking the question, why do we have the audacity to solicit $65 million for a plane or for a jet, but the elementary school down the street from your church can't even feed can't even educate, or they use the lowest resources when it comes to computers and technology in the city?
Yeah.
You can't even you got a $65 million jet, but the young person that's growing up trying to learn how to use computers is using the Commodore 64. Now Commodore 64, and we running Windows 7 or 8.
For sure. But here go the curveball though. He solicited the people to come up with the money. So what that means is that he got strong confidence that the people that he solicits gonna come up with the funds to get that. So now we turn the spotlight on what are people actually doing with their money. You know, what is it about you as a member that, unlike the way that we feel, you feel like this is a necessary good for your pastor to go across the water and minister to.
But that's the point.
To that, versus you taking that money that you would give to that and supporting something yourself within the community. So what does that say about the actual, they call them partners, I believe, the donors? What does that say about the donors, that you would be much more willing to put your resources into something as far-fetching as that versus contributing to the school that your children go to?
Well, the mindset of the donor is one that he's doing God's ministry. He's doing God's work. So the donor is thinking, if I'm a donor, then I'm thinking that this is 100% what God wants, because this is coming from the pastor now. See, this is what you have to understand. The pastor in the black community has a lot of influence and weight.
True.
A lot of pastors are very influential. They have the gift of gab, which is, for those that don't understand that word, they have the ability to manipulate and say things in a way that is very influential, but it can also be manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's coming from the pastor who holds so much weight in our community, then a lot of people want to support that individual. So the donor then, in my opinion, becomes a victim, because the donor is only doing what's asked of him. And a lot of the times, you may hear the pastor say, "Thus saith the Lord." So now he's taking on the form of God, or God is speaking through him, and I'm the donor. And if I'm hearing instructions from the Lord that I'm supposed to be the person that donates that $300, then I'm being obedient. See, the person that doesn't donate the money is the one that's not being obedient.
They're being disobedient.
They're being disobedient. So the question becomes, for me, is more or less, how do we show the benefits of this pastor? See, if this pastor flying over to Nairobi, Kenya, I have no idea what's happening over there. I can see two or three pictures, and I can think that he just
set it off
over there. So this is what I suggest. See, I suggest, why not take that money, put it into a network, or some type of Cisco network, or some type of classroom training or classroom ministry, and develop a school connection between the students over at your church with the church over there, and then you do an internet session or some type of Skyping session between campuses, and you minister that way. Let the kids be able to benefit from that $65 million.
Totally. Because
there are ways, and then you can see the result of what that kid being. See, the biggest thing that happened to me, BG, was back when I was in the 10th grade. I was able to go over to Europe, and they say you are only as limited as land you see.
Right.
The more land you travel, the more land you see, the more you dream, the more you believe, and the more you have hope. Them kids that may attend Pastor Dollar's church, some of them may not even left the SWATs or left College Park or wherever that ministry is. Figure out a way to use that $65 million. If you want to minister to the people over in Nairobi, Kenya, that's fine. But that's why we got World Wide Web.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that decreases the degrees of separation. So I'm just saying that there's multiple ways to take that money and be as effective as than having to go over there, because now I'm donating $300, and then they don't want you to ask questions, because you're not supposed to ask questions, because that's the pastor.
You sending it in a black hole. It should totally be an investment by the church into the church, and by it being an investment, the people of the church should be able to benefit from that money. So, like you say, some programming that if you want to connect the world, and allow us to all get some of that experience and reap some of the benefits. I just feel like, in a personal sense, that, and I'm sure, in my heart of hearts, I believe that they're gonna come up with the money for this jet. Yeah. I just feel like, the same people that have always poured into that ministry to have built that facility down there in Georgia. People are going to pour into this, and I believe he's going to get that.
The conversation that you and I are having are fueling, and other folks are fueling the reason why they will get the money. It's because now the message now goes from, can you help to donate to so that we can go minister, to now the message that's being preached probably on Sundays at that church. I haven't attended. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But one would imagine the message that is being taught now is the enemy is trying to prevent us from preaching to the world. You see? So now it goes from asking to be ministered to now the enemy. So we have now become a part of the message, and that part is we're the enemy because we are asking the pastor to be held accountable for soliciting that type of money for a luxury good.
How many scholarships can you get for $65 million?
That's a great question. Well, they probably have an outreach.
That's what I was going to ask. They might have a scholarship fund, maybe.
They probably have, they got 68 outreach ministries. Now, why? So this raises another question. Why do you have 68 outreach ministries? How effective can that be when you are so stretched that you are ineffective? And I'm just speculating. So my whole point is that, you have to really ask the question, and you really have to understand what the ultimate goal and purpose and what the message is behind. When you have someone that specifically says, we need 200,000 people to donate $300, that alone to me just doesn't even feel right.
Though, man, that's hard. That's hard to swallow, and it's disappointing and scary at the same time. That in this moment, in today's time, in our country, I mean exclusively to our country, to where some of these neighborhoods and some of these areas are very similar to like what you would see in a third world country.
Right.
Possibly right around the corner from the home campus that we're talking about. And there's no global campaign. There's no global campaign for that area. So for me, if you've got partners all around the world, you in home base, and your people in home base are struggling, it seemed like to me that you would be campaigning to them folks to help support home base.
Right. Home base can even be Louisiana. When we had Katrina, you had people that donated or what have you, but there's so many things domestically that could be considered home base that doesn't even have to be within Swats or College Park or whatever, Georgia, that can be addressed. And I don't know, but I don't want to continue to beat a dead horse, but I did want to kind of transition to the second part of this conversation, and the second part of this conversation really centers around. You and I kind of talked about Kirk Franklin, and we talked about essentially Kirk Franklin writing an open letter, basically calling out Creflo Dollar and his solicitation of a $65 million plane. And for those of you that have or have not heard that particular side of the story, Kurt Franklin basically blasted Creflo Dollar for soliciting, and he wrote an open letter basically saying, when a pastor wants people to buy him a private plane while a missionary in Somalia bathes children with swords, that's a shortage of character. Franklin stated last week in a post on pathos.com titled, "The High Cost of Character When I Camouflage My Greeds to Look Like Needs. That's a shortage of character." Now, BG, you and I had some dialogue and some conversation around Kurt Franklin and him weighing in on Creflo Dollar's solicitation. Creflo Dollar, Kurt Franklin are all in the ministry in ministries and probably run in the same path and speak to the same audiences. What are your thoughts, and can you share some light on your thoughts on this open letter?
Yeah, something else just came up to me when you read that, though, and it's small. But why you had to use an example of a missionary in Somalia? Why is there all of our references to people struggling somewhere in another part of the world? Why you just couldn't use an example of something in a city in the continent of North America, in the country United States, man? Like, this shit going on right here. Why we got to be pretending like people not suffering right here amongst us? But I digress. I'm not a fan of open letters like you and I talked about in our discussions prior to this. I'm not a fan of the whole open letter thing. Because for me, it's just another element of this whole social media drama connection that we have going on when issues like this arise. And like I was telling you, I personally feel like with them being in the same arena, being in the religious section, I'm sure with the level that they are on, that they've had some personal interaction before. So personally, I feel like man to man, that dialogue should have been more of a personal dialogue. If he wrote a letter, that letter should have been directly to Creflo Dollar, or it should have been a direct discussion with no media, no blog hyping. It should have just been straight, direct, man to man. Like, I don't agree with you, because for me, what this does, it just brings about more drama in a situation that doesn't need to be fueled with more drama, especially within our community, between men and all that type of stuff. And then also for me, you know, it seems like by writing an open letter, it kind of puts or is used to put the person that wrote the letter in a place of getting recognition and notoriety. Is giving you relevance to the situation. It's basically a marketing ploy to push your agenda across because you're taking advantage of this opportunity. So for me, it's so many things about that whole open letter thing that's just out of order and wrong. And I would just much rather see if a man has a disgruntlement with something that a man does, address that man personally on a personal one-on-one basis, and you might have more of an effect on it than just putting it out on the internet as an open letter. I don't agree with that.
So here's the conversation we had, and this is where I would like for you to share with the audience your thoughts and views. But I think we both can agree that there needs to be some type of accountability that's shared between someone like a Pastor Dollar or Pastor Ivy Hilliard, given that these two individuals have very influential positions. We also discussed, for example, someone like, I don't know, we did a podcast where we were talking about AAU basketball coaches and them need to be held accountable. So why is the open letter such a bad thing when essentially what Creflo Dollar, in your opinion, why is it such a bad thing when in retrospect Creflo Dollar is essentially finding a public way to hold Pastor Dollar accountable for his actions and what he's doing.
You mean Kirk Franklin?
Yeah,
Holding Pastor
Right.
Dollar. I just don't like it, man, because it's a drama thing. It's something that's gonna get you a headline. It's gonna be what was that on a blog? Did you first see it on like one of the blogs or internet sites?
the letter.
Yeah.
It's an article
On one of the websites. So that's gonna get you pub. It's gonna be like Kurt Franklin addresses Creflo Dollar in an open letter. Like, that's a headline. So I just think that it's a more of a thing that a person would use to gain recognition for themselves and to give themselves this platform to speak as a level of authority or being a spokesman for a said group of people, versus really getting to the crux of the matter and addressing that person that you got a problem with. Because now what you're saying is you're setting a precedence that if I got a problem with you or something that you said or done, then I could just post it, which is what we do, post it on Facebook, post it on Instagram, do something subliminal, put it out there, and I never have a discussion with you about it. But I've got so much of a problem with it that I'll put it out, but I won't come and talk to you directly about it. And I think that as men and as a person of that magnitude, like, that's how you do that in the community. If that's your brother in Christ. If he wrong, go talk to that man directly and say, man, did you think about this? I don't think that was right. And give him an opportunity for y'all to have that discussion versus just throwing it out in the atmosphere. And now we got a run of articles creating all these old headlines full of drama. They fighting, they doing all this kind of stuff, which doesn't really do anything for the people.
But how do we then, at that point, if he does go and talk to him man to man as you recommended, how do we know that conversation is happening? As the public, do we need to know that he's been checked?
I mean, you can say what you want to say. We could use this and express our opinions on it and how we feel about it. But if you're gonna address a man. And really, the onus of that accountability is gonna come down to the people that are going to be affected by this the most, and that's the people that have been solicited to raise this money. So for us, really.
Well, I mean, we've been solicited. We are part of the 200,000. There was a solicitation on his website.
I didn't get hit by the website. I just found out about it through the news, through the blog site. So I haven't been solicited, but I'm not one of the faithful members of that particular ministry. So if they're good with it, they're really the only ones that are in the position to truly hold him accountable for it. The rest of us, we just making a lot of noise and hoping that he hears us and has a change of heart.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
But I honestly think they're gonna come up with that money.
Oh, definitely. I think they're gonna come up with the money too, and I think you make a good point about Kurt Franklin, in that you do have to question what was his motive behind writing the open letter. I think that's an accurate question to pose, only because of the time and place and the day and age we live in. And that is one of opportunity and opportunist. You have a lot of people that continue to take advantage of the Selma operation and the Selma 50 years of the march. And you have opportunities there. Kurt Franklin could have seen this as a way or as an opportunity to become relevant and to, like you mentioned earlier, to speak, to put his place in the position of authority and to kind of try to position himself to be, to have more influence, to be seen more than what he actually is. So point being is that I think you raise a really good point, but I think that also speaks to another issue that just we face in the black community and in black America, is just one of opportunities and one of trying to find a way to position ourselves to be higher than the other person. So I think that's the reason why I kind of wanted to have this conversation, because really behind this one story, there are two bigger issues here that we really need to discuss and talk about. Mm-hmm. And I think those two issues we kind of discuss, but it really takes away from the better good of the individual. And if we're going to speak on empowerment and self-empowerment, and if we're going to speak on power circles and developing networks so that we can continue to push an agenda, that's the reason why I hold so much respect for the action that LeBron took. And examples like what LeBron did going back to Cleveland has so much more weight today than it did a year ago, simply because of what we see with the Creflo Dollars and what we see with the Kurt Franklin open letters.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have Creflo Dollar soliciting for $65 million, but you have LeBron James saying, "Hey, this is bigger than me. I'm gonna go back to my home." Mm-hmm. But yet and still, we don't get that one action is bigger than anything that's currently being done by that ministry. You know, that's empowering the people to have the knowledge and to have the self-awareness to understand the position that you are in, i.e. LeBron James is, and have the power to say, okay, I can impact this many people in my community, and to make that move to go back to Cleveland. That alone is so much influential and so much inspirational than this very act of trying to impact the world when you have the same issues at home.
Yeah, and we know that it had an emotional impact on that community, talking about LeBron James going back. I wonder, I would be interested to see what the economics of that city and the surrounding areas has been with him being back in there, if they've had an economic boost because of his presence and all of the things that come along with having this major sports.
Oh, it was. They said when he left, just the Cleveland Cavaliers went from being $1 billion organization to worth what, $500 million when he left, and now he came back is worth $1 billion. So that alone shows you how much power and how much weight his name carries.
And we've got people that actually have the platform in all of the different facets of life that if they just focused on those things, that they could make a significant difference. But you were kind of going towards it. Within our community, we have classism within a struggling community, and you really see it as people get to these higher levels of their careers and these higher income brackets and stuff like that, that disconnect. There's a disconnect from the real world and from the people that are basically supporting your movement. And you just forget about them, and we see it, and it's unfortunate that even in something as sacred as faith-based, religion, the place where you go and worship, that you're still experiencing the same thing. You can't even escape the ills of the world when you go into church.
But that's the reason why athletes and entertainers have so much influence over our youth today. It's because we both learned a poem when we joined Omega. And lines of that poem, I would rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I would rather one to walk with me than merely show me the way. The eyes of better people are more willing than the ear. Point being, when you have people like LeBron who are making a tangible move, something that I can see LeBron pack his stuff up, move back to Cleveland and then be in the community that's very visible. To me, that is just as powerful ministry than a preacher sitting into preaching a sermon every day. And that's why, for me, what LeBron did is so powerful, because he had no reason. He didn't have to. He could have stayed in pretty Miami and continued to he won championships. He had fulfilled his destiny of at least winning a championship and putting his names up in the rafters. And just went on about his way. But that's the whole point that I'm trying to make, is that we have too many of these larger mega churches that are soliciting their members for all of these things, but they're not even reaping the benefit of it, and they're not even being impacted on a daily basis. And so, from an accountability perspective, even though we may not agree with the approach that Kirk Franklin took, you still have to some kind of way hold these pastors accountable and say, hey, it's not okay to take this $65 million when the college down the street, when the elementary school down the street, they're using Windows XP for their operating system. So that's all I got to say.
And as we see, and the listeners can attest to the fact that we have a lot of conversations that kind of go down this area and the responsibility of our leadership, whether it be political or religious and all that type of stuff. It's a dangerous game because a lot of people put a lot of weight on their religious life. And to have someone in a position of leadership, someone that the people are really providing a lot of, or putting a lot of confidence and faith in their teachings, to have them as the leaders manipulate those people, not see those people's true needs, and to take advantage of the people, is a scary thing, because you're going to have more and more people just getting totally disgruntled with the whole process and getting frustrated and upset, and then, just trying to find answers on their own, which is a difficult thing to do. So they're going to get that $65 million. No. After all that,
that's a vulnerability. That's a vulnerability. Churches have become, that's a place of refuge for a lot of people, a lot of souls. It's a vulnerability place, a place where you go and you pretty much want to open yourself, and you would hope that no one would take advantage of that. And hopefully, even with that $65 million jet that they probably will purchase, hopefully some good can come out of it, And like I said, I'm not for that type of purchase. Personally, I think that money could be used to make a tangible impact on several young people in that community. And if it's not within that community, domestically within the United States, I can take you down to Mobile, Alabama, and find ways to use the $65 million if we were looking for, as Kirk Franklin said, a Somalian bathing children with sores. That's a shortage of character, if that's what we're looking for. I can take you down to Mobile, or I can take you to somewhere where that $65 million could be used appropriately. So that's all I got, man.
Yeah, so I guess if you like it, if they like it, I love it. But I think as individuals, I think these are things that you should look at when you start thinking about like what church you're going to go to, and if you want to be a member, if you want to stay a member, is looking at how that church services the true needs of the community that it sits in. And there are a lot of churches that really do, if they're going to gather resources, they're gathering those resources to impact their immediate community. So when we had this conversation, we're not encompassing all churches and all pastors doing the same thing and trying to manipulate, but it is a real thing. And so, if I could just offer anything, is just, protect yourself and make sure you're in a place where you're growing and the community around that particular ministry is growing as well.
I just came up with a new term.
All right.
Use some CI.
Okay.
Church intelligence.
Church intelligence.
Yeah.
For sure.
You need to have some type of church intelligence and be able to decipher and really decipher the spirit and the soul of that individual. So I think that's a good one. Church intelligence.
Yes,
we
sir.
need some church intelligence. So that's all I got, man.
All right, well, let's get out of here.
Let's get out of here.
Check us out, freelunchpodcast.com for podcasts and blogs. Also, hit us up, Free Lunch Podcast on Instagram and Free Lunch Pod C on Twitter.
So for those that are listening, if you're interested in sponsoring to the podcast in any way, hit us up. any of those forms that BG just mentioned. So, Free Lunch Podcast, we are home to the New South movement, and we are out of here. Peace. What's up?
Everybody wanna be down the south. In the club.